how's it going? I hope you're well. Welcome back to my channel and to another video in the Living in a Fantasy series, which is a series that I decided to create to give people a little bit of an insight into what it's like being a crew member with Disney Cruise Line. If you want to check out any of the other videos that I've created in that series, I will leave the playlist down below for you. I've done a couple already about my job and just generally what the application process is like and the training process, so that's what I've already done. This video in particular though is going to be talking about the number one topic I always get asked about by every single person that I tell that I'm a crew member, which is, what's it really like being a crew member? They're always looking to find out like behind the scenes information and like what it's really like. They always have this sort of expectation or this assumption or this pre-existing knowledge or idea of what they think it's like being a crew member. So I guess that's what I'm going to talk about and talk to you about those kind of things that people expect, and to talk about what it's really like from the perspective of an actual crew member. The first thing that I'm going to talk about, and the number one thing that I always get asked about, which is you work on a cruise ship, that must mean that you get the most amazing food, because the food on cruise ships are really great, right? So you guys must get really great food too. Well, I'm here to tell you that that's wrong. Our food in comparison to the guests' food isn't the greatest. You know, you want to have something that fills you up, that's sustainable for your whole shift, and a lot of the time that doesn't happen. Often it's the same kind of food, which is usually kind of weird. It's sometimes lukewarm, sometimes it's not the freshest food. So yeah, because of that, it's not always the best time on the ship when you're seeing all these guests eating all this amazing food and you're like, I wish I could eat that. We have the same kind of food, like I said, all the time. It's usually always some kind of meat, which is a lot of the time pork, which I don't like. We almost always have some kind of chicken, but it's always on the bone. There's always two different kinds of soup. There's always a salad bar. There's always pasta. There's always some sort of weird fish, like grilled tilapia or fried smelt or something weird like that. So those are like the general like dinner things that we have. Lunchtime wise, again, we have like salad bar. We have like the same kind of things that we have for dinner, like pasta and stuff like that, but like not as heavy, like meal based things. And there's always a section sort of in the middle that has sandwich foods. You kind of have an expectation of what the weekly menu is going to be, because there'll be nights where we have like fried chicken. People love that night. There's taco nights sometimes. They always have pasta one night. They have on the Inbox days on the Fantasy anyway, I don't know if they do this on other ships, they have hot dogs, and they used to have fries. They got rid of them for a while, so that was always nice to have, like, have that to start the cruise off with. But yeah, we don't get the guest food, contrary to popular belief. However, sometimes we do. I've just told a lie there. A lot of the time, myself being one of those people, you walk into the mess where they have the food and you walk right back out again, because you know it's not anything that you're going to want to eat. So you go back to your cabin and eat snacks and generally wait for something called late night. I don't know if I've mentioned this already on my channel. Late night is basically where we get sort of leftover food from the restaurants and everything that the guests eat in the evenings. We get like fresh pizza that they make for us. We have the pizzas from the kids menu, the mac and cheese, the steak fries. There's usually like some form of meat, like pasta dishes. They have like the puddings and things like that that guests have. And they have like pot noodle kind of things as well. And yeah, a lot of the time the crew members will wait for this to happen. That's usually at like 10:30 or 11:30 at night, which isn't always the best. It's not the healthiest lifestyle to live, where you're waiting that late at night to eat a decent meal, but if it's what gets you through the day, then that's what you have to do to survive. So yeah, that is the food situation. The next thing that I always get asked about, and people always are curious about, is the cabin situation. What are the cabins like? What do they look like? Are they small? Do you have to have a roommate? All of these questions. Yes, we have roommates. Yes, they are small. There are probably pictures and videos online somewhere of what Disney Cruise Line cabins actually look like for crew. I'm not going to put them on my channel just because you're not technically supposed to do that. You're not supposed to put anything backstage online, and that is what the cabins are. They're backstage, they're in the crew areas. So if you really want to see that, I'm sure there's some other videos online on YouTube that people have given like a cabin tour of crew cabins on one of the Disney cruise ships. So if you're really interested in what that looks like, go look on somebody else's channel or just Google it, because you're not going to find that from me today in this video. But I can give you a general idea of what the cabins are like. They're small unless you are a officer or in the main stage department where they're like higher up, or maybe a technician, a senior technician or something like that, where they have slightly bougier rooms. They're bigger. They generally only really have one bed. Sometimes they have sofas in there. They have a bigger space than we do. Our cabins, they're usually very small. It's like a box, essentially. When you walk in, it's usually quite narrow because the bathroom wall sort of sticks out at a weird angle. Everything's stuck to the wall, obviously, because if things were not stuck to the wall, they would probably fall off with the waves and everything. We have a desk area, which obviously we share. We have a wardrobe each, and then we have areas in between the wardrobe that are like shelving that we have one each of, and then the shelving above the desk we share half of. There's a TV, there's usually some cupboards that we have one each of, and then there's 2 drawers in the desk that we can have each. Well, there's 4 drawers, we get 2 drawers each. And then there's a desk chair, which is foldable, so you can fold it up and move it somewhere if you want to have people in your cabin, and a fridge. And then the beds, they're bunk beds, they're usually at the back of the cabin, and they usually like span like one length of the cabin to the other. They have like a privacy curtain, and they have a ladder that usually is detachable, so that you don't have to have that in the way all the time. I don't know if that's the case on the older ships, but on the newer ships anyway, it's definitely detachable. We are almost always under the water. That's where we live. We feel everything. We feel all of the waves. We hear all of the waves. Some of the cabins are above machinery, so I used to live above the anchor at one point, which is very annoying when I was trying to sleep in and we were docking, and sometimes I would always hear the anchor dropping into the water, or sometimes I would hear it if I was in my cabin trying to hang out and just to relax during my break. I would hear it rising from the floor, the sea floor, and it would be really loud, and I'd be like, great. And sometimes the room would shake, so those cases aren't always fun. The cabins are generally like all across the ship. Like I said, under sea level. If you are an officer, you do get your cabins above ground a lot of the time with a porthole. It's usually very nice for them, but obviously for the majority of us, we live underwater. Some of the departments, they have more than 2 people to a cabin, which I've not experienced because that's not what my department has. But you almost always share your cabin with somebody from your department. So for me, in my job, I'm youth activities. I always share with somebody from entertainment, so that could be somebody else from youth activities, it could be a lifeguard, it could be somebody from crew staff, sometimes it could be somebody from costuming, like the character costumes and stuff like that, or sometimes it could be a technician, or it may even be a character team member if it's too many people in the YA or whatever department, or if there's too many people in the character department for them to be able to share with each other. But yeah, they all kind of vary in size and shape, but generally speaking, they have the same things in them. So that's all I have to say on cabins, really. Small, but you make it homely, you make it what you want. Internet, we do get internet as a crew, but we have to pay for it. I think the guests do too. A lot of the time, we don't want to pay for it, so you will find a lot of crew members off the ship trying to get Wi-Fi from somewhere on their phones like this. You can usually spot us because we're either in a cafe or a restaurant trying to get good food, sat on our phones, being unsociable because the internet can be quite expensive. For like 250 megabytes, it's $10. For 500 megabytes, it's $20, which it can go quite quickly, especially with certain apps. Like for instance, if I went on Instagram too much or Facebook too much, it would go down so quickly. So generally speaking, I deleted a lot of apps off my phone, or I just didn't use them because I knew that it was gonna take up my internet and make me pay for more and more internet than I needed. And like phone calls and things like that, or like video calls, don't even bother because those are also very expensive. If we can get service from like any of the American ports, if you've got a phone that works in America, that's always pretty great. I guess a lot of people want to know about the crew activities or amenities or things like that that we have on the ship. So we do have a laundry area, we do have a gym, we have like lounge areas where we can go and hang out with friends. There's an area that has like books and games where you can sit down at the table or the chairs and like hang out in there. There's a lot of like computer areas as well. There's an area that has like gaming, so there's like a pool table, there's a ping pong table, there's Xboxes or something down there, and then there's obviously like coffee places and bars that people can go to as well. So those are those kind of places. And obviously we have our food area as well, which is the mess. There's obviously costuming where we get our clothes to wear to work, and that's open every day. Whereas I suppose in the parks, they're not assigned to you. On the ship, you do get your own costumes assigned to you. They measure all of your measurements and everything, and they make sure that everything is fitted to you. Sometimes if you've eaten too much after coming back from vacation, your trousers are a little bit tight and you're having to loosen them a bit as much as you can. But then like by the end of your contract, because you haven't eaten as much, they're very loose. So yes, all of your costumes are your own. So yeah, that's costuming. And there's also a medical centre for crew as well. It's the same medical centre actually that is for guests, but we have different hours with guest privileges. So I mentioned before being able to go in guest areas just now. I also mentioned like food and things like that. We do sometimes have the option, depending on our department, to go into guest areas and experience the things that the guests do. I guess it's good in the way that we can talk to the guests about the things if they ask us. So we are able to talk about the different shows or the food or things like that, and the experiences that the guests can have on the ship. We have that knowledge already of what that is like because we are allowed to go and do them ourselves. With the restaurants, we do obviously have to put in a request to eat there, and sometimes they will get denied depending on how busy it is. The guests always come first, so there'll be times where you get turned away and things like that. That is always the case in any situation. Guests always come first, so they're not going to always let you in. You're not always going to get to do the guest things because the guest's the most important person in this situation. It's the same with like the shows and things like that. We're allowed to go see the movies, we're allowed to go see the Broadway style shows or the variety acts on the ship, but again, if the theatre's busy, they're going to put the guests in before you, so sometimes they won't let you in at all. Sometimes they'll make you stand up in the back, which isn't always fun. We also are allowed to go onto deck 11 sometimes, which is quite nice, or I guess it's deck 10 for the older ships, and we get to go and watch the movies on funnel vision. We can go get ice cream in the ice cream parlour. We can go and do the mini golf that they have. We can do the aqueduct. We can go to the hot tubs in the adult area and experience those kind of things. So those are quite nice every now and again to be able to relax and just take some time out to hang out with your friends and feel like you are not working, even though sometimes you are recognised. That's why in some departments, if it's you're with the guest all the time, like for instance dining or maybe housekeeping, they're not allowed guest privileges because obviously they work so closely with the guests all the time. They're assigned certain guests that it would be weird if they were seeing them all the time in the restaurants eating with them, or you know, they're in the pool with them. So that's why only certain departments are allowed that privilege. But it is nice if you do have it to be able to, yeah, just experience the ship as a guest and to be able to talk about these things with the guests if they ask you about them. In terms of activities and things like that for crew, they do have a lot of events that we get to go to. They have sometimes special character meetings that we have, like for instance around Christmas time or Halloween, they'll have all of the characters meeting together in their costumes. They'll do things around different events like Star Wars Day at Sea, Marvel Day at Sea. They'll have those kind of meet and greets. In the kids clubs, we do a lot of things for them sometimes after hours. So we'll have the Marvel characters or the Star Wars characters meeting. We'll do some shows for them, like for instance we've done Super Sloppy Science for them before. We've done Woody's Roundup. In my last contract on the ship in the early months of 2020, me and my boyfriend at the time created an escape room experience for the crew, which we made all of ourselves, and we set that up in the Ocean 8 Club. So that was fun to get to do that. We have trivia, which is always fun, and we have, yeah, lots of different events going on. We'll have movie premieres, which are always cool because you get to see movies pretty soon after they come out. Usually quite late at night though, so it's usually like midnight until like 2 AM. I watched The Mandalorian, a couple of episodes of that when it was around Star Wars Day at Sea when Mandalorian first came out, so that was fun. There's always things going on that are for crew. There's obviously like parties and things like that. That's generally not my scene. I don't usually go to those a lot, but yeah. We have a lot of things to keep us entertained in the evening. Sometimes we'll do crew trips to places too. Like for instance, they'll do trips to the malls and things like that sometimes in specific ports. They will sometimes have trips to Disney World on a embark day as well, which is quite nice. So yeah, lots of things on offer for crew to keep you entertained. That's not just you working, but it is quite hard sometimes to have that balance between working and having time off and hanging out with your friends, because generally your social time is either before work, if you've got a break during your work hours to get off the ship quickly or just hang out with friends during that break, or it's after work. And a lot of the time our working day usually finishes at like midnight, so it's always weird because when people are working 9-to-5 jobs at home on land, they can have that time after work to hang out with friends all the weekends, but because we're working all day every day, it's kind of hard to find that balance, and you do sometimes burn out because you're hanging out with your friends every night and you're working until midnight and staying up until like 2-3 in the morning hanging out with your friends, and you have work the next day. So that is quite hard to find that balance, but you make it work like I've said before in this video, and you make it what you can, because it is hard, but you're going to need those hours to hang out with your friends, to relax and to get your mind off work and things like that, and to just, yeah, just chill. Because yeah, that is sometimes what you need after a long day of work. You need just downtime. We have crew bingo, which is quite fun, and you get to win some prizes for that. Variety shows happen, so you can be a talent in the variety show, which is quite fun. Sometimes we have the guest variety acts come and do a show for us. So yeah, there's always something going on, always something to keep you entertained, but you can just chill in your cabin if you really want to. And then I guess the last thing I'm going to talk about is shore leave. So yes, as crew members we can go off the ship. We're not just confined to the ship all of the time. If we have the right hours or the right schedule, we are able to get off the ship in the ports to do the things that we want to do just for a couple of hours to just unwind. A lot of the time though, that is like eating food or finding Wi-Fi, but we will sometimes do some of the port adventures that guests can do, and then oftentimes we'll go to Disney World on an embark day. There are times though where you're not able to leave the ship, and those are times where if you have a duty during the guest drill or you're part of the essential crew that are needed on the ship at the time, we always have somebody on the ship if those emergency situations happen. It's called IPM, import manning. So for instance, you always have to have somebody that can drive the lifeboat, or that's in the assembly team, or that is part of the life jacket team, or that's part of the fire team, or that's a medical person. All of those people, some of the people will have to stay on that have those roles, because if an emergency does happen while we're in port, then we have the people that are trained and that know what they're doing there to deal with the guests on board at the time if that does happen. So sometimes there'll be weeks where I can't get off the ship, just on like 1 or 2 days during that, I think it's like a 2-month period, but sometimes it's annoying because unless you don't realise you might want to get off, you'll go to tap out and they'll be like, oh, you have to stay on the ship. Or sometimes it's happened to a lot of people, they'll be working on Castaway Key, they'll go to tap out and they'll be like, oh, you can't leave, so you have to like run around and like try and find somebody to switch your IPM with, and that's your responsibility. You have to find the people, you have to fill out the forms, you have to get it approved by somebody. So there are occasions where we can't get off the ship, but yes, generally speaking, we can just relax and have a good time and explore the ports just like the guests get to do. But yeah, those are just generally, I think, the majority of the things that I get asked about all the time about being a crew member, and that is everything, really. If there's anything else that you want to know, let me know. Maybe ask in the comments down below. Maybe I could turn it into another video, or if there's like a Q&A kind of style video that you want me to do about being a crew member, let me know. I'm more than willing to film that for you guys, but this is just, I guess, what I think people mostly want to know about when I tell them I'm a crew member. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel for more content like this, and just for more content in general. I'm always on the lookout for more friends to make friends with on my channel, and yeah, I will see you next time in another Living in a Fantasy video. Goodbye!